Dark Side of the Rainbow, Chapter 8. It might have been hours or days later when Polly awoke. She had no sense of how long she'd been out. She'd been having the most awful dream. The citadel nearly destroyed, the rainbow sea evaporated, Heathcliff nearly killed. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, and looked around her. And then she cried out in anguish. She was lying on the ground in front of the rainbow citadel. Deep black fissures rent its pristine surface. The earth all around her was scorched and stained. Heathcliff was still unconscious, his fur matted with blood and soot. But there was nothing compared to what happened to her kingdom. Rainbow Falls was gone. The floating archipelago, the rainbow of pools, Indigo Beach, all of it burned into nothingness by Dorothy's magic. It hadn't been a nightmare. It had been real. The air was hot, smelling of blood and smoke. Wisps of singed rainbow drifted across the scarred landscape, and Carmine was crouched over her, one hand on her shoulder. "Your Royal Highness," the sprite said, his voice relieved. "You're alive." "It was real," Polly whispered. "It was real." She buried her face in Carmine's shoulder and sobbed. "Yes," he said quietly, rubbing her back. "I'm afraid it was." "It's gone. It's really gone." "Yes, Polychrome. All of the guests fled. Many of the sprites were killed. The outer regions are destroyed. What you can see is all that's left." "I did this," she cried. "I let her in. I didn't listen to Bright and protect my people the way I should have. It's my fault this happened." Carmine didn't say anything. He just let her cry. When she had cried herself out, Polychrome took a deep breath. Heathcliff needed tending to, and so did her kingdom. Rainbow Falls would never be what it had been. Too much of it had been destroyed. But she could protect what was left with every bit of magic she had, and her life. Next to her, Heathcliff stirred and mewed plaintively, sounding for all the world like a hurt house cat. She tangled her fingers in his fur, her sooty cheeks streaked with tears. "Once more, dear unicorn," she said. "Be strong for me, then you can rest." He licked her hand feebly with his raspy tongue and lay back, his sides heaving. She tightened her fingers in his fur. He managed a feeble purr. With her other hand, she took Carmine's. "I need you too," she said quietly. Carmine nodded. Polly closed her eyes, summoning all the magic she had left. She felt the power of the rainbow flooding through her, drawing through her body, and Heathcliff's, and Carmine. "Seal this place," she said. "Set it free from the earth to float through the sky. Make it unfindable to any who wish it harm. Keep it hidden. Keep it safe." Old magic poured through her and radiated outward, engulfing what remained of Rainbow Falls. A shimmering wall of rainbow light surrounded the citadel and the few floating islands that were left, and Polly could feel the crystal beneath her pulling her away from the earth and hurtling toward the clouds. Oz dropped away into an ocean of mist. She had done it. They were safe. They were hidden, and Dorothy would never hurt her kingdom again. She sank back down into darkness, dreamless sleep, as Carmine and Heathcliff collapsed beside her. Polly awoke for a second time to Heathcliff licking her face. She felt terrible. Every part of her body hurt. The magic had torn its way through her like acid. But she was alive, and Rainbow Falls was alive, and that was all that mattered. She hugged her unicorn to her gratefully, and he purred like an engine. He still looked awful, but he was alive, too. Already his wounds were healing. Next to her, Carmine was still unconscious, but the rise and fall of his chest showed that he was still alive. She heard voices echoing from the citadel, the sprites and handmaidens who'd survived the attack and who hadn't fled. She smiled. They had done it. They had sealed Rainbow Falls off from the outside world, and now it was time to rebuild. "Hey, babe," said a familiar voice. Polly sat up with a gasp. Heathcliff purred. Bright was lounging at her feet, looking as gorgeous as ever. "How did you get here?" she demanded. "I sealed this place off." He shrugged. "Did you? I didn't know then. I got lost. I was on this beach looking for waves, but the surf was pretty bad, and I thought of you, and the next thing I know I was here." "What happened?" "She was right," Polly said. "It's a garden, not the ocean." Bright wrinkled his pretty brow. "What are you talking about?" "It's something Ozma said. I told her that we were supposed to let our people be free like the ocean." She said we were supposed to protect our kingdoms and tend to them like a garden. She was right. I ignored every bad feeling, every sign, and I invited Dorothy in, and I made her my guest. I practically threw her a party, and you told me too. I should have paid better attention. He looked around in awe. Dorothy did this? Holy shit. So the rumors are true. Yeah, they are, Polly said. She told Bright everything that had happened once he left, about visiting the Emerald City and the Scarecrow, what Jillia said about finding the Order. She told him about the fight she had with Dorothy when she'd returned, and the battle. As she talked, Bright drew her close. He didn't say anything, just stroked her hair and rested his chin on the top of her head. When she was done talking, his arms tightened around her. I'm sorry, Paul. His voice husky. I'm sorry I wasn't there. You couldn't have done anything anyway, and I told you to go, she said. She fought the urge to start crying again. This is all my fault. I deserve to be alone. Hey, Bright said, gently tilting her chin up. You didn't know. You couldn't have known. Even the stuff I heard, none of it suggested that Dorothy had the power to do anything like this. I should have known something was wrong, she said brokenly. Hush, he said, and kissed her. His mouth tasted like rainbow smoke and apples. His hand slid down her back and toward her waist. Her breath caught in her throat as he felt a trail of butterfly kisses down her neck. I know how I can make you feel better, he said in a low voice. In spite of herself, Polly smiled. Not right now, she said firmly. I mean, definitely later. But all of this happened because I was too busy having a good time and not taking care of my kingdom. First, I rebelled. Then, I apologize. I could apologize then we can rebuild. Then I can apologize some more, Bright pointed out, his eyes sparkling. Polly laughed. Tempting. Very, very tempting. His eyes grew serious again. Are you going to find this order that Jillia told you about? Do you think it's some kind of force organizing against Dorothy? I don't know, Polly said, and I don't know what Mombi would have to do with it. She's an odd old bird. She chewed her lip thoughtfully, looking around her at the damage. And then she shook her head. Whatever they are, I'm not much of a joiner, she said decidedly, and there's too much work to do here. Maybe Oz needs you too, Bright said. Maybe, but Rainbow Falls needs me more. And right now, I need you. Think you might stick around for just a little while? I could probably manage that, Bright said, reaching for her hand. I still owe you a couple of apologies. Polly leaned her head against his shoulder, scratching her unicorn behind the ears with her free hand. Maybe she'd find Mombi, and maybe she wouldn't. Whatever happened now, she knew one thing for sure. She would never fail Rainbow Falls again.